Think back to the last time you visited a grocery store. You walked right in, grabbed a pack of meat, paid for it, and left. No planning, zero risk, maybe 15 minutes of your time. But for the vast majority of human history, bagging that same fresh cut of meat meant facing a beast that outweighed you by thousands of pounds, with weapons built right into its face, and absolutely no desire to become your dinner. So how did they pull it off? How did we, with no sharp claws, no fangs, and a running speed that wouldn't even impress a golden retriever, become the absolute most lethal hunting force this planet has ever seen? The answer isn't just one method. It's a mix of tactics, so creative, so ruthless, and so incredibly sophisticated that modern researchers are still finding new evidence of them today. Let's begin with the wildest, most counterintuitive hunting method ever conceived, where the actual weapon literally does nothing. For decades, researchers found razor-sharp Clovis stone spearheads embedded in mammoth bones all over North America and assumed the obvious. Ancient hunters threw these spears at the beasts. In 2024, researchers at UC Berkeley decided to actually test that assumption. And what they uncovered turned everything completely upside down. Throwing a spear at a 6-ton mammoth generates nowhere near enough power to reach a vital organ. The physics just don't work. So either prehistoric hunters were doing completely pointless things for thousands of years, or they were pulling off something totally different than what we all assumed. They were planting the spear in the dirt and stepping back. A 6-ton mammoth charging at 15 miles per hour generates 67 times more impact than the strongest person could manage with a throw. By bracing the spear into the frozen ground, backing away to safety, hunters let the mammoth's massive momentum drive the weapon straight into its chest. The Clovis point's clever design made it even more devastating. Once the tip pierced the flesh, its engineered shaft attachment made the stone point act just like a modern hollow point bullet, tearing open the wound terribly from the inside out. The deadliest beast roaming the wide open steppe essentially became its own executioner. The hunter didn't even need to get close enough to be touched. And some ancient hunters didn't even use spears. Instead, they cleverly transformed basic rocks into lethal weapons. When targeting smaller game, hunters picked out hand-sized throwing stones, heavy enough to pack a real punch from 25 meters away. This wasn't just luck. Scientists analyzing stone tools pulled from the Cave of Hearths in South Africa realized that these prehistoric ancestors were hand-picking rocks with a highly precise size and weight. When it came to larger beasts trapped in tight canyons, they scaled this strategy right up. A team of hunters would funnel the target into a tight gorge or canyon with absolutely no easy way to escape. Meanwhile, other hunters, already waiting up on the high ledges, would then roll or hurl massive boulders down at the helpless creature, which stood no chance against the falling rocks above. That high ground wasn't just about safety, it was their entire strategy. But before we keep going, let us know in the comments where you're watching this from today. All right, let's get right back to it. Some hunters wanted absolutely nothing to do with getting close to these beasts, so they built massive traps instead. From the sky, they looked like giant kites stretched right across the sandy desert floor. 2 long stone walls stretching out hundreds of meters, slowly tapering down into a funnel from the ground. Looking from the wide opening, you wouldn't even know you were inside a trap. The stone walls were intentionally kept low, just high enough to make animals uneasy and not enough to look like an obvious roadblock. See, the creators knew something most hunters never quite grasp. You don't cage an animal to control it. You just have to make every other path a bit more uninviting than the route you want it to take. These designs are called desert kites, and in 2022, 3 distinct peer-reviewed papers confirmed their purpose simultaneously. They were massive traps. These traps funneled gazelles and ibex down narrow pathways, ending in deep pits or steep cliff drops. with their locations showing an expert understanding of animal travel habits and the terrain. The coolest thing about these desert kites isn't how massive they are, it's isolation. Similar designs have popped up in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Slovenia, and even the Andes. Different cultures on opposite sides of the world with zero contact with one another landing on the exact same answer. Not because they copied each other, but because they were all clever and this challenge had one best solution. Now, this is where things get pretty creepy because the next tactic didn't need walls or spears at all. It used chemistry. In January 2026, a paper published in Science, advances showed that 60,000-year-old arrowheads from the Umlatuzana rock shelter in South Africa still held traces of toxic plant poisoning, pushing our use of toxic arrows back tens of millennia earlier than we ever realized. This toxic poison came from the gift ball plant, a bulbous wildflower whose natural toxins attack the heart. Ancient hunters harvested the sap, processing it without accidentally poisoning themselves, then coated tiny arrowheads too small to kill instantly. That was the whole strategy. Stone Age hunters had to understand delayed consequences. Shooting an animal, seeing it run off completely fine, then tracking it patiently for hours, knowing that at some point the toxin would take effect. That is an instinct. That is real chemistry, strategy, and deep tracking working together inside a single human mind 60,000 years before the invention of writing. This same poison plant was still being used by indigenous hunters in southern Africa in the 1700s. This identical recipe and strategy were preserved completely across 50,000 years of memory, passed down from parent to offspring across 2,000 generations, never being written down. Yet of all the survival tactics early humans created, the one that most completely defies all logic is the simplest. We just never stop running. The human body is a total biological disaster for hunting. No claws, terrible teeth. Skin so thin, a house cat draws blood. Zero night vision, no way to smell prey from afar. Our top sprint speed wouldn't even beat a fast chicken, but we can jog at a steady pace for an unbelievable amount of time. And practically nothing else on Earth can do that. We have around 5 million sweat glands, which is more than any other creature on Earth. While wolves quickly overheat during long runs, and cheetahs must pant and rest after 30 seconds, the human body keeps cooling itself down and keeps on moving. Our Achilles tendons act like built-in biological springs. Our gluteus maximus, the biggest muscle in our body, is built specifically for long-distance running, not walking. We can actually breathe independently of our running strides, something four-legged beasts simply cannot do. Anthropologists have actually witnessed this technique, called persistence hunting, used by the Kalahari sand bushman desert. Hunters chase a kudu antelope through blazing heat over 100 degrees, running 15 to 25 miles at a pace. Sure, the kudu sprints faster, but it can't sweat efficiently through thick fur. After 2 to 5 hours, its body temperature spikes to fatal levels. It collapses from severe heat stroke, its own internal heat, cooking it from the inside. The hunter simply approaches the animal, which can no longer stand, and delivers a single final blow. From the kudu's perspective, a creature is chasing it that just never stops. No matter how far it flees, that weird upright figure keeps coming calmly, steadily, and not even breathing heavily. There is no natural defense against that. Nothing in the wild prepared animals for an enemy they can't outrun. And then humans took all of those physical advantages and supercharged them by adding the one weapon no other predator had ever mastered: language planning and coordinated teamwork across a group. At Schöningen in Germany, 8 beautifully designed spears were found alongside the bones of 50 butchered horses. That number's no accident. It was a coordinated group effort requiring deep knowledge of where those horses would gather, and precise positioning of hunters working in perfect coordination with no one breaking rank at the wrong moment. Someone planned that hunt before it even started, Someone assigned roles, someone shared a plan, and between 15,000 and 35,000 years ago, humans made a huge choice that no other species had made in Earth's history. They sized up another apex predator and chose not to kill it, but to recruit it. Ancient sites in Jordan dating back 11,500 years ago showed a massive rise in small animal bones, showing signs of dog digestion. Cave paintings in Saudi Arabia from 8 to 9,000 years ago depicts dogs on leashes, wearing collars, helping with planned hunts. The human-dog partnership swept across the globe faster than any past human breakthrough, because it made both species more successful than they could ever be alone. Think about that grocery store. The packaged meat you picked up in 15 minutes, completely safe, represents the peak of a 300,000-year evolution. That grounded spear that used physics rather than muscle, the massive trap that used design instead of raw conflict, the poison arrow that used chemistry instead of force, the strategic group planning that used language instead of solo strength. Each of these breakthroughs was built by people who had nothing but sharp eyes, memory, and the passed down wisdom of everyone who lived before them. No labs, no schools, no written guides, just brains sharp enough to tackle an impossible problem and map a way that the world had never seen before. The wildest part of these tactics isn't how wild they were. It's how incredibly smart they were. And every single person alive today is the direct descendant of someone who figured things out